My name is Eleanor Grace Whitmore. I'm 68 years old, and for almost 5 decades I served as a wife, a mother, and the silent core of Hazelbrook Orchards, a modest organic apple farm tucked in Pennsylvania's rolling hills. My hands, now rigid from arthritis, still recall each phase of shaping dough into sourdough bread and trimming trees at sunrise alongside Richard, my husband. 3 weeks ago I laid him to rest. Richard and I had been wed since 1981. Together we created everything: this orchard, this house, this family. Yet, the day following his funeral, I came to understand that perhaps I hadn't constructed what I believed I had. Or maybe it simply wasn't sufficient to keep my children close. Richard passed from pancreatic cancer. 14 months of seeing a man rooted in the soil fade away. His vitality taken away piece by piece. He didn't wish for the kids to learn of it. Let them enjoy their lives a bit more without the gloom, he had murmured to me one evening, his words heavy with morphine. And out of love for him I consented. But truthfully I already sensed it. Our children, Darren and Samantha, had drifted apart well before the diagnosis. Darren, the older one, had forged a high-speed career in Boston's finance sector, and hadn't returned home for more than a few weekends in over 10 years. Samantha, meanwhile, drifted between one unsuccessful wellness venture and the next, always supported by Richard's savings and always requiring just one additional loan. I had wished that sorrow would draw them back to our essence, that they'd recall the orchard, the family meals, the affection that formed this home. But upon their arrival for the funeral, I didn't witness kids grieving their dad. I saw experts assessing an inheritance. The evening after the funeral, I sat by myself in the kitchen, gazing at the weathered wood of our dining table. I suggested we could go through Richard's belongings together the following day. It was a modest act, a mother's method of creating room for remembrance. But they had different intentions. The next morning, sunlight poured through the lace curtains that Richard and I had selected together 3 decades ago. I brewed coffee, the plain variety Richard preferred, not the exotic blend Darren had carried from Boston, and sat waiting at the kitchen table. They descended the stairs attired crisply, Darren in a blazer. He didn't trouble himself to take it off. Samantha in a silk blouse with impeccably styled hair. They appeared as if en route to a corporate gathering, not settling in to honor their father. "Mom," Darren started, setting his coffee mug down with that familiar calculated accuracy I'd observed in his dad. "We've been discussing." Samantha looked at him, then toward me. "We believe it's time to begin resolving matters. The estate, the operation, the house." I blinked, uncertain if I'd heard correctly. "Resolving? It's sensible," Darren explained. "You can't manage the orchard by yourself, and the house, it's large, Mom. Too much for a person of your years." My years. The phrase lingered heavily in the air. I had tended those trees next to Richard through snowstorms and scorching summers. I had managed payroll when we couldn't hire help, baked pies for charity events, operated tractors, transported crates to food pantries. "We want you to feel at ease," Samantha interjected, her tone sleek like a marketing spiel. "There's an excellent retirement village 2 hours south, Sunnyvale Estates. Activities, companions your age." I rose to gather the breakfast dishes, requiring movement to conceal my trembling hands. Then Darren produced a folder. "Dad discussed this with me last year," he stated, pushing a collection of papers toward me. He desired for Melissa and me to assume control. I examined the document. It was on Darren's company stationery. Richard's signature, too steady, too flawless, seemed wrong. He hadn't scrawled that neatly in months. Not since the morphine. "This isn't from our family attorney," I remarked. "He was clear-minded when he signed it," Darren maintained. "He intended this." Samantha added swiftly. "A new beginning. There's a developer keen. $7 million for the property. We'd all be secure. You'd be looked after. A developer. They aim to sell the orchard. Demolish it. Swap a lifetime of yields, sustainability, and community contributions for pavement and subdivisions. You're discussing disposing of your father's life's labor," I said softly. Mom, be practical, Darren urged. The orchard won't endure eternally. I sensed something building within me. A gradual, smoldering anger I hadn't accessed since I once drove away a fox attempting to raid the henhouse. I gazed at both of them, my offspring, and stated with serene firmness, "Present me the will." Darren paused, then slid it forward once more. I didn't lay a finger on it. "I'm heading to bed," I declared. "We'll discuss tomorrow." But inwardly I already realized there would be no discussion the next day. They weren't mourning. They were implementing a scheme. I didn't rest that night. I remained awake in the bed Richard and I had occupied for decades, hearing the groans in the farmhouse walls and the breeze rustling the apple trees beyond. Each noise was known to me. It was the quiet in my children's souls that had grown unfamiliar. By dawn, the aroma of coffee drifted through the home. Not the comforting, reminiscent sort, but acrid, intense, imported Darren's type of coffee. I proceeded slowly, my joints throbbing more from deceit than from age. When I descended, they were already prepared, coats donned, suitcases ready. The suitcase wasn't my own. "We gathered some necessities for you," Samantha said cheerfully. "We figured we could drive you to Sunnyvale today, just to see it. You don't need to choose yet." "I'm not moving to a retirement community," I replied, serving myself a cup. Darren glanced at his watch. "Mom, be sensible. The documents are complete. We finalize with the developers next week. You can't remain here." "I've resided here throughout my adult years," I responded, tone steady. "This is my home." "It's all of ours," Darren stated bluntly. "Dad bequeathed the business to us. It's time you release it." I stared at him, and for the first time, I truly perceived him not as the lad who once trailed Richard through the orchards inquiring about bees and frost, but as an outsider, a man who regarded me as an obstacle to handle. "I require my medication," I mentioned, stepping aside. "And I'd like to collect some family pictures." Samantha agreed, clearly eased. "Take any personal belongings you desire. We'll send the remainder." Upstairs I didn't weep. I collected my pills, but also something they were unaware of. Behind a panel in the medicine cabinet fitted in the 80s, when Richard fretted about thieves, I retrieved my passport and birth certificate. In the closet, I extended behind his old flannel shirts and extracted a small fireproof box. It was weighty. It contained something stronger than emotion. A deed, the original deed to 20 acres of land, acquired in my maiden name prior to marriage. Land with water rights. Land vital to any upcoming development. When I came back downstairs, my purse was heavier, yet my spirit lighter. "Prepared?" Darren inquired. "Certainly," I replied, permitting Samantha to link her arm with mine. I allowed them to assume I was vanquished. We drove beyond the fields just starting to flower, beyond the elementary school where I volunteered, beyond the library where I read to kids. But rather than heading to the highway toward Sunnyvale, Darren turned onto a distant county road. 20 minutes later, he stopped on a gravel edge next to a vacant field. "This is your stop, Mom," he announced as nonchalantly as if noting a traffic light. "The house and business belong to us now." Samantha's smile wavered. "Darren, what?" "She'll dispute the will, cause dramas. This is neater. She has a tire, her meds. There's a gas station 5 miles ahead." He opened my door, and just like that, they abandoned me on the roadside with nothing, or so they believed. The vehicle vanished along the road, trailing a dust cloud and the stench of treachery. I remained motionless, the wind pulling at my coat, holding the small suitcase they had prepared for me. I wasn't scared. I wasn't shattered. I was liberated. I started walking, not toward the gas station Darren had so kindly referenced, but toward town, toward my subsequent action. My flats weren't suited for gravel paths, and the early spring sun was already heating the nape of my neck. But with each stride my resolve strengthened. In my purse was all I required. My ID, my passport, my medication, and most crucially, the original deed to 20 acres of prime orchard land. Land that Darren and Samantha didn't know about. Land I had bought in my own name before Richard and I wed. It was a safeguard then in case the business faltered. Richard had termed it our emergency safety net. Now it was my salvation. Those 20 acres weren't merely any property. They encompassed the sole natural water source on the whole estate. Without it, no watering system. Without watering, no orchard and no building. My children thought they had trapped me, but they didn't grasp the ground under their feet. They didn't comprehend the burden of heritage. I did. After almost 2 hours of walking, my feet were sore and blistered. But I arrived at the outskirts of Hazelbrook and the well-known view of Miller's Gas and Grocery. It was compact, traditional, and unaltered. A spot where folks still addressed one another by name and settled in cash. I settled on the bench outside and observed the vehicles arrive and depart. I didn't appear impressive, merely a weary elderly lady with a suitcase. But I possessed something much more potent than they ever could. The truth. Ray Miller emerged from behind the counter, cleaning his hands on his apron. He'd known me for more than 30 years. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, his forehead creasing. "You okay? You seem a bit pale." "Just pausing, Ray. It's been a lengthy day," I replied. He eyed the suitcase next to me, then back at me with worry. "Real sorry about Richard. He was a fine man." "Yes," I nodded. "Yes, he was." He paused, then inquired softly, "You need the phone if it's no bother?" He guided me inside, past the racks of canned peaches and bargain cereal to a tiny office in the rear. I dialed the number from recall. Our family lawyer, Harold Jennings. "Naomi," he picked up on the first ring, astonished. "I've been attempting to contact you. I anticipated you at the will reading." My hold tightened on the handset. "What reading?" There was a silence. "Darren submitted a will." I had doubts. "It didn't align with the file your husband and I revised last year. I need your assistance," I stated, my voice distinct. "And your confidentiality. You have both." "My office." 1 hour. I hung up and faced Ray. "Do you offer prepaid phones?" He nodded. "A couple." "Want one?" "Yes, and a bottle of water." He declined my payment on the house. "Mrs. Whitmore, anything else you need? Just let me know." His generosity almost unraveled me. But I didn't cry when I buried Richard, and I wouldn't now. I had tasks ahead and I wasn't done yet. Harold Jennings' office was on the second level of an old Victorian building on Main Street, directly opposite the town library. He'd been our attorney for over 30 years. Harold was the type of man who donned sweater vests earnestly and still trusted handshakes. His secretary, Helen, drew in a soft breath when she spotted me. "Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Jennings is awaiting you. Would you like water? Coffee?" "I'm okay, thank you," I said. Harold greeted me at his office door. He hadn't aged significantly since Richard's final visit, perhaps a touch more hunched, but his eyes were keen, vigilant. "Naomi," he said, not directing me to the desk, but to a duo of leather chairs by the window. He sat opposite me, his demeanor grave. "Tell me all of it." So I did. I recounted the funeral, the counterfeit will, the conference room style talk in our kitchen, the drive, the roadside desertion, every particular. He didn't cut in. He simply listened, nodding at times, his expression darkening progressively. When I concluded, I delved into my purse and withdrew the fireproof box. From it, I extracted the original deed to the 20 acres, the land Richard and I had discreetly reserved decades earlier. In my name. Harold inspected the paper with a respectful hush. This is invaluable, Naomi. This isn't merely land. This is advantage. With the water rights and zoning, the developer can't proceed without this." "I know." He reclined, drumming the deed's edge contemplatively. "The will they presented, it's a fake. I suspected as much when I viewed the signature. It was too pristine, too fluid for a man in hospice. I knew it wasn't Richard's." "We'll contest it," Harold affirmed. "But that requires time. In the interim, we employ this." He raised the deed. "You retain legal possession of the most essential segment of the land. They can't advance the sale without your approval." "I want my home returned," I said softly. "And I want them to grasp what they've committed." Harold nodded. Then we'll ensure they grasp it. First, I'll compose a letter to the developer. They must learn that the property isn't as promised. Will they withdraw? They're wise, yes. Developers dislike legal battles, and they especially dislike partial land rights. He rose abruptly, determined. I also know a judge in district court. We can submit a motion to halt the sale until resolution. I gazed out the window, across the street where a young pair strolled hand in hand, oblivious to the subtle tempest brewing in this modest office. I don't seek vengeance, Harold, I murmured more to myself than him. I seek truth and serenity. You'll have both, he vowed. Beginning now. By midday the following day, Harold had lodged an urgent injunction to suspend any ownership transfer concerning Hazelbrook Orchards. A messenger delivered the legal alert to the development company Darren and Samantha had negotiated with. Within hours, the agreement was paused. The developer, confronted with unforeseen legal issues, and the disclosure that a vital land section with the only natural water source was separately owned and unrevealed, started retreating. Their attorneys contacted Harold with pressing demands for details. I informed them the facts, Harold said as we reviewed papers in his office. The land is fragmented. The water rights aren't conveyable. And crucially, your children lack the authority they assert. That night, I got a text from Samantha. It was her first outreach since abandoning me roadside. Mom, please call. We need to discuss. Darren's panicking. We didn't know about that other land. Can we just resolve this? Resolve this. I stared at the words on my prepaid phone. No remorse, no acknowledgement of their actions. Just alarm now that the funds were escaping. I didn't respond. Later that evening, Darren phoned Harold straight, insisting on answers, attempting to reclaim dominance. But Harold serenely advised that all issues would proceed via legal means. Their comprehending, Harold noted, that they erred gravely. They assumed I had nothing remaining, I answered. But I had all they neglected to appreciate. He regarded me with subdued admiration. You're managing this with poise, Eleanor. Many would have opted for total destruction. I've lived too long with compassion in my core to turn resentful now, I said. But I won't stay mute either. Outside, Hazelbrook town continued its routine. Children on bikes, a dog yapping afar, someone trimming grass. Life remained straightforward here, still genuine, and I planned to preserve it so. The land wouldn't be sold. Not now. Not this way. The orchard Richard established, the heritage he departed, wasn't merchandise. It was home, and I wasn't finished safeguarding it. In the ensuing weeks, I didn't go back to the old farmhouse. I leased a simple apartment over the bakery on Hazelbrook's Main Street. It featured a tiny balcony, sufficient for a rocking chair and some potted herbs. The spot carried scents of cinnamon and fresh loaves in the mornings. It wasn't the home Richard and I constructed, but it was mine, and that counted. I resumed teaching quilting Wednesday evenings at the community center, much like before. I even launched weekend sessions at the library, imparting knowledge on organic gardening and sustainable fruit cultivation. Teens attended, seniors came, even young pairs aspiring to begin farms. People paid attention not because I elevated my voice, but because I spoke with legacy in my grasp. The land we shielded for decades. I placed the water rights in a trust for the Hazelbrook Agricultural Cooperative, a local effort aiding young farmers. They'd utilize it, not trade it. They'd tend the trees as Richard did. That was the future I envisioned. Darren and Samantha maintained their separation. I caught rumors that the developer withdrew completely, that the forgery was officially disputed and halted, that their standings suffered in their cities. But I didn't revel. I didn't require vengeance to be overt, to be authentic. I selected serenity but not sacrificing truth. The orchard stayed pristine, blossoming as ever in spring. And each time I strolled past it, I smiled, not with resentment, but with the subtle fortitude of a woman who had reclaimed not only her land but her voice. They had undervalued me, but I had at last recalled who I was. I frequently reflect on that instant on the gravel road, standing solitary with a suitcase I didn't prepare. observing my own children depart without another look. It should have crushed me, but it didn't, because in that quiet, I finally discerned the reality I'd overlooked for years. Love is an unquestioned allegiance, and motherhood doesn't entail enduring disloyalty, merely because you nurtured those who deceived you. Darren and Samantha thought they could obliterate me, that since I was elderly, mourning, solitary, I wouldn't resist, that I had no option but to surrender all. But they overlooked something. Before being a wife, a mother, a widow, I was Eleanor Grace, a woman who created something with her hands, her heart, and her intellect. And I had never needed to yell to be resilient. What they perceived as frailty, my quiet, my faith, my affection, was truly the power that shielded me. If you're hearing this and you've ever been discarded, undervalued, or regarded as a mere afterthought in your own existence, I want you to absorb this. Your strength isn't in the volume of your battle. It's in how deeply you understand what you represent. And when you hold your position, even softly, it resounds more than any deceit. My orchard still endures. My name remains on the deed, and my life, it's mine once more. So to anyone who's ever been informed this is your exit, I say walk if necessary, but don't abandon your value. Walk with intent. Walk with subtle might. And when you're prepared, share your tale. Could just rescue another. If this narrative touched you, remember to like, share, and drop a comment below. And if you've ever been undervalued and discovered your resilience, share with us. Your narrative counts.